this many people out because I know a lot of you probably don't necessarily know who Ed is. Ed's not a self-promoter. He's a producer, he's a journalist, and he's a damn hard worker. He's probably one of the most prolific journalists I've ever known, and I know a lot of journalists. I've been really impressed with him since we met in 2019. I watched this guy reincarnate White House correspondent, True News. Like he's absolutely dedicated to getting the word out, and he doesn't always know how he's going to do it. And that's how we got relinked up again here recently. Asked for a little bit of help because he's about to produce the movie Died Suddenly 2. How many of you in this room saw Died Suddenly 1? All right. That is not enough hands. For those of you who haven't, I highly recommend you go to Rumble, watch the movie, share it with whoever you can, because these shots can and will hurt you and people that you love. And the first time that movie went out, it was seen well over 100 million times across all platforms. It's a massive, massive accomplishment for one guy and a small crew trying to get the word out. I happen to be friends with a lot of my heroes, and I try to bring as many of my friends and heroes here to talk to you guys as I can, because it's a blessing for everybody. I want everybody to follow Died Suddenly on X, same way you're following Thea now. For those of you who don't like social media, join the club. I hate it. But I'm learning X because I have to. That's where the dialogue is happening, and that's where we have free speech. So without any further ado, I bring you the great Ed Szall. Ed, what up?
It is an honor to be invited to speak out here. I've seen several speeches online. You guys are quite blessed to have some of the best speakers in the country come through here. I think Scott Pressler came through last, right? Scott is a hard worker. And I think I'd like to first say, everyone in this room should be very proud of the work you put in. Not this past year, the last 4 years. My goodness, okay. Ever since the election was stolen, I think every one of us had this pit in our stomach, trying to figure out how we were going to win back this country. And like you, I was sitting on the edge of my seat on election night. I knew that President Trump was going to win if it was going to be done fairly. Everybody with a brain knows that. But that's not always how things are done in this country, right? It was very, very shameful what was done and how people have been attacked since. I'm talking about 2020, and I'm talking about the attacks on people like Mike Lindell and other election integrity, activists. But you know what? We have a reprieve of sorts. And I'm going to be speaking about several of these topics tonight. My biggest thing has been to try to empower and my employees, my allies, and those that we engage with. Ironically, our audience is always actually a lot older. And that's a blessing, because I think, as you know, as parents, as grandparents, and as people that are well-educated, well-read, you're well-informed. It's honestly the best defense we have at all times against tyranny, against evil, is to be informed. All right? Without information, without the right information in our brains, how could we dispel evil and lies and these other things that we face? I'll tell you, as someone who's been in the trenches, it is exciting what we're going into, but I have several warnings too about what we're going to face even in the next couple months. So the first thing I'd like to kind of go into is President Trump is building his administration out right now. And at least for me, as not just the producer of Died Suddenly, but as someone who's actively engaged and trying to improve my health, and I want to have a big family. I want all my friends to grow strong, and I want their kids to be strong. Health is at the forefront of this country right now. RFK Jr. is going to be, he's not the vice president, he's not considered to be the most senior, most powerful cabinet member, but he is going to be one of the most important cabinet members. And if you don't know about Bobby, Bobby's pick was primarily to be a response to movies like ours and really the activism that everyone in this room has confronted. The pandemic was a shocker in this country. And I don't want to remind you guys of how terrible that time period was, but it was nasty. Families were turned on each other. You were forced to separate from everyone in society. We talk about trying to stay connected online, but no one really likes to engage online, right? We prefer to get together like this. We prefer to hug each other. We prefer to see each other and look each other in the eyes. We were robbed of this. And for us, when I formed my media company about 4 years ago, our goal was to do whatever we could to make that situation, those protocols, that lockdown, make it so that it can never happen again. And we stuck to this. We knew that one of the first things we had to do was we had to expose the crimes that happened during the pandemic. And for those who saw it died suddenly, you probably thought you might have seen a horror film, right? It was very shocking. It's funny too, because my parents-in-law, my mother and father-in-law, they're here tonight with me too. They don't, yeah, they're wonderful. They're actually wonderful too. They don't watch everything I produce because I produce a lot of scary stuff. They'll tell you, okay, it's truthful stuff, but it's scary. And it was scary because what was done to each and every one of us and everyone in society, we were treated as an experiment. We were experimented on. And I've recently learned quite a bit about the after effects of this on us and on society. One of the biggest things has been fertility. And you're probably going to hear about this from doctors. I'm not a doctor, but I'm well researched. Fertility is big. Our country was lulled into this immigration structure over the last 20 years because of something called replacement statistics. There was this theory that we were not going to be able to replace our populations to be able to pay for Social Security, pay for taxes, pay for all these things that get paid into the system from having workers. First of all, it's a lie. Okay, it's a lie from hell. All right, we have enough people here, enough families, and enough spirit in this country to replenish ourselves. But one of the lies that was sold was that we needed to have the third world imported in order to replace the loss of society. And thus, now you have the immigration crisis and everything that came with that. The immigration crisis is undoubtedly tied into the many problems we're facing in this country right now. I'm looking forward to an audit of this election. I've been talking to a lot of the main people like Scott and others. And it's odd, there's about 20 million votes missing right now, right? Okay, about 20 million votes that they somehow voted in the last election. They're not here now. And we seem to have more immigrants. We have other people that should have been voting, right, according to the left. I have a feeling that will not only prove that there was massive theft in 2020, but I also feel it will show that, as we heard from your esteemed board and leader, the big thing here is voter ID. Voter ID has a tie to many things. And when we talk about cell phones, we talk about technology, getting involved. One of the things that Died Suddenly 2 is looking into right now, and our production actually began yesterday. We began our first planning and first shoots. It's around what's going to be after the cell phone. And I think when it comes to getting educated about how we must be involved, you also have to know where your red lines are. I think everyone here is happy to have an ID, right? Everyone here has got a driver's license. Everyone's got something to identify yourself. One of the things being looked at right now is using your cell phone to identify you. And I would caution you on this. If you hear this come up in an initiative, you do not want this to be a way to identify yourself. And the reason why, we're not far off, probably only a couple of years actually, and under the Trump administration, this is going to be debated and discussed. The implant in the brain. It's real. It's not something that's crazy or science fiction. Right now, there are human trials being conducted to put a chip in the brain that will connect to your cell phone, and then you will engage, whether it be tweeting or texting or even taking calls, through your brain. Now, this sounds nuts, right? No one in here would be for this, right? No? Maybe a few, they're going to keep quiet. But I would caution you, every time there's been studies on this, tumors have formed around where the implants have been placed. And I know that one of the things that Elon Musk, there's a lot of things that have come, many benefits from Elon Musk allying with President Trump, opening up X as a platform for us to tell the truth and to engage with one another. One of the things Elon Musk is going to use his positioning and his access for is to promote Neuralink. And I think it'd be one of the few things I'm opposed to Mr. Musk over, but it's something we need to be aware of. Neuralink is a system that's supposed to help the disabled, or they're going to even say help the elderly, help people communicate better. The problem with Neuralink is that in order for you to place the chip inside your brain, it's a pretty major surgery, first of all. Elon Musk gave a speech actually at the Neurosurgeons Association Gala. They had this big event about a month ago, right before the election. And something I heard in it, and I hope to, again, ask Mr. Musk about it, I hope that maybe there'll be a press conference of sorts about this. He said that this form of surgery is going to become the new form of plastic surgery for many. And neurosurgeons across the country have to be prepared to become the new plastic surgeons, the new cosmetic surgeons. Because he's suspecting there's going to be at least 100,000 people in the country by the end of President Trump's first, is his term here coming in, that are going to elect to do this. My question is, how is this going to change society? We've had a time period where I'd like to say many people in this room, you're among the elite when it comes to being informed. Right? Anytime you enter a room or a conversation, I guarantee people sit there and listen, and they ask you questions because you're informed about what's on the ballot. You're informed about the issues of the day. You're also, you know quite a bit about wisdom, about common sense. Hopefully your grandkids and your kids are digging your brains. They're not just trying to throw it away. Say, oh, that's old Pa. He's trying to tell us about what we need to know. Hopefully, people are already listening to you. They're going to want to listen to you for this subject. We've already found that the subject of digital identification, it was already being discussed prior to the pandemic. There's actually a whistleblower we're going to be interviewing in a couple weeks for Died Suddenly 2. And this whistleblower found out that digital identification and contact tracing were already being discussed prior to the onset of the pandemic. It's a very odd thing, right, to be discussing before we were all getting locked down. We were all going to be marked, in a sense, for our what was it, a $500 check? That was the reparations we got for the horrible terrors and tortures we experienced during the pandemic. The whistleblower told me, and he was already afraid to come forward on this. He said, well, first he asked me, he didn't think it mattered anymore. He didn't think people cared. I think you guys would care, right? You want to hear about this, right? You want to hear about what the big pharmaceutical companies were doing. What he told me was he quit before the pandemic because he refused to be involved in anything which would harm his fellow Americans. And I said, that's an admirable thing, sir. You have done a great thing by doing this. But he said he was afraid to come forward because he knows how powerful the pharmaceutical lobby is. And we're seeing this actually right now when it comes to the picks. Every cabinet pick, there's a few that they're more centrist than we'd maybe like. Every cabinet pick, in some form, stood out against the lockdowns and the tyranny. Whether you look at the Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, I'm very excited about this pick because in order to do the work that I do, in order to do the work that this whistleblower wants to do, and in order to do the work that RFK Jr. has promised to do, he needs to not get bogged down in investigations, lawfare, abuse of power. And that's exactly what came from the Department of Justice. President Trump, you mentioned the very fateful day in Pennsylvania. And that day, I think everyone here, you stood still for just a moment. I didn't know what was going to come out of that, but we know that God intervened on that day. And I know that God intervened on that day, not for us to stand by, not pay attention, not be involved over the next year, the next 3 years, the next 4 years. He wants us to get involved, but sometimes, maybe you felt this, we don't exactly know how to get involved. And it isn't as simple as just opening up a Twitter account, okay? I wish it was that simple. The first step to this is actually, it's where you put your time. And I know for a lot of folks here, you're grandparents. You're looking forward to Thanksgiving and Christmas. You're looking forward to seeing your kids, even if they don't agree with you politically, right? The arguments are festive, right? Is everyone ready for the debates over the cranberry and the turkey? It's going to be fun. I mean, some of them are going to be pretty pissed off, let's be honest, okay? But it's not that they're angry at you, right? And I do want to encourage you, as someone who's, I'm a millennial, I'm in my mid-30s. I've got many friends with families. My wife and I, we haven't been blessed with kids, but I did mentor up a lot of guys I like to think of my kids. They're my production staff, or a lot of my workers, a lot of people that have helped me engage in the mission that we've engaged in. Well, the thing I want to encourage you guys with is that when it comes to the next generation, they are the single most important place to put your time. The single most important. Even if it's frustrating. And I know sometimes you talk to them, they're not paying attention, they're dug onto their phone, they're not listening to you. But I want to encourage you, they are listening to you a little bit. Every single one of you are imprinting on them. Each time you spend time with them, even every the times you lecture them, or you get in arguments, they're going to remember you. And their grandkids, their kids after them are going to remember you. How you engage with them is very important. And I think education, especially in this next 4 years, is going to be at the forefront of our national discourse, but also for our work. For me, I'm preparing right now to engage with the next generation on health. Now, health is as we noted, a subject that not everyone thinks about. You know, we're all politically minded here, right? We spend a lot of time reading newspapers. We're up on every single update. We know today about the potential of nuclear war, but are we taking care of ourselves? And are we making sure that our kids are taken care of? I would gather to say that's not at the forefront of our thinking, right? We don't wake up every day thinking about our adrenal glands. We don't wake up every day thinking, right, about fertility. I mean, that's kind of weird to wake up thinking about. But you have to. You have to think about this. And I've been paying attention to RFK Jr. RFK Jr. has laid out a pretty solid plan. And it's not just to clean out the corruption, because that, Lord knows we need to do that. The corruption is so systemic, and I'm not gonna bore you, because you've had many speakers here talk about vaccines and other things. I'm as against the vaccine as it possibly comes, but it's not the most important thing to talk about today. When it came to the vaccine, a lot of people don't know that the origins of the regulatory committees that led to allowing this terrible poison, this emergency procedure and the sorts, this experiment onto us, it came from the HHS. That was one of the origins. But did you know that the HHS, when it first started in this country as an agency, it was actually paired with the Secretary of Education? It was actually paired in the minds of some people that came before us that were very wise, very, very diligent, that you wouldn't be able to take care of the country unless they were also being educated well. And that included telling them how to eat, how to live, what are some good practices. Right now, we have an epidemic when it comes to education in this country. I see this all the time. I'm a creature that lives online to a degree, but I still find the time to read and engage and spend a lot of time in debate, because this is important. But I'm talking to a lot of kids in the next generation. They don't even know how to have conversations. And that's not anyone's fault here. You guys raised great kids. I've met many of your kids, actually. I've met a lot of the fruit, I think, of your hard work. Society nowadays, however, has taught many of the next generation, not only is there no hope, but if they seek to get by or cope with the stresses, it's not to come to their parents, not to come to mentors. It's instead just to drown themselves in their cell phones, in their feeds. And we also have in this country many things we're getting addicted to. And as someone who's grown up on the internet, I tell you guys, pornography is the single worst thing that's hitting our kids right now. And I'm from Florida. I came up here from South Florida. We had grand successes at the school board races. We're engaged in the same work as Thea and trying to get good candidates in to change the system. But there was something that it really frustrated me in trying to change the education system in Florida. And luckily, I heard a very good thing from the transition team. We were engaged with a lot of the folks down there in Mar-a-Lago, trying to understand how we can help. I've heard that it is true that the Secretary of Education is going to get abolished. This is going to be huge, folks. It's billions of dollars going back to the state level. But it's important to know how to spend that money. Right now, that money is going to get gobbled up by special interest groups, by new curriculums. And in Florida, we did a great job, but I'll tell you this, we were too hyper-focused on getting smut-filled books out of libraries. And look, I was against those books. But when I inquired in my county to see how many times any of those books were taken out, were checked out, it'd been checked out 0 times. 0 times. You know where most of the kids are seeing this nasty material and a lot of this content? It's on their cell phones. It's on their cell phones. So I think the first discussion has to be, how are we going to protect our children and the next generation from being exposed to this content online. And that's a bigger topic. The FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, I like to say he's going to be the FCC chairman. I'm pretty sure he's coming in as the FCC chairman. He's going to be in charge of regulating how content, videos, pictures, writing are published online. Now, the first problem he's going to face is the tech monopoly is incredibly strong in this country. There are some advancements that have been made to erode the immunity of some of these organizations to censor individuals. Yeah, there was a good man that came up here, the man with the charity. He spoke about Gary Franchi. Gary Franchi just had a major victory against Google in Texas. And I'm sure you're going to hear about it soon, if you haven't already. But the short and skinny of it is that Gary Franchi, as a news aggregator, a news producer, he was being shadow banned, he was being censored, he was being muzzled because of the people that he would help. Right? He's the kind of man that helps people in need, regardless of how it's going to impact him, but it blew back on him pretty terribly. And Gary was censored, Gary lost monetization, which essentially means that Gary is not able to make a living online. Well, he just got his monetization back last week. It's huge. It really is. And what it's going to mean for many people like Gary, I'm a direct benefactor of this. As someone who produces content online, I produced for every show from Steve Bannon to Laura Loomer and Mike Lindell. I've been engaged in the behind-the-scenes activity of many of these warriors, but they have all been forced into corners on the internet because of this monetization rule. The ruling and the shift last week is huge, and there's more to come. Because of President Trump and how he's been treated. I mean, he was the first major person, let's be honest, to be censored, right? The only reason where anyone's talking about online censorship is because President Trump had his voice stolen from him because of the truth that he was speaking. Now, President Trump hasn't forgotten this. I think President Trump is making sure that one of the first things he does when he gets in is he makes all these platforms not only available for people like Gary Franchi and myself, but for everyone in this room. You mentioned the use of X. The reason why X is so important is no one's going to hear about some of these debates and these discussions unless wise people engage in them. If you want to see some of the arguments online, you want to probably smash your head against the wall because some of these arguments are so stupid, okay? I was just reading one. Patrick Bet-David got in with, they called her the hook twago. You shouldn't know who she is. It's ridiculous, right? A girl got very popular because she made a lascivious comment, and now she's got a Spotify deal and all these other things. Yeah, and maybe she's banned from YouTube too. Isn't that funny? The Siri activated. But the reason I bring this conversation up is in the reply section, there was, it looked to me about a 6-year-old Vietnam veteran. Well, maybe not a Vietnam veteran, but a military veteran of sorts. They engaged in the conversation. The conversation was about censorship. And the person said, and I'm so glad you're going to be doing this class on the Constitution and talking about your rights, they reminded everyone in the thread about what the First Amendment was. You would be surprised how few people in the next generation understand anything about our Constitution. We're in a race right now. I mentioned when Chad asked me to come speak, what is the most important thing to talk to people about? There is a date on the books for when those that tried to force President Trump out and darn well tried to kill him and have tried to kill the voices of everyone in this room, they have a date on the books for when they would like to have our voices somewhat siloed. Sent to the ghettos and the corners of the internet and never to return. It's 2030. 2030 is a big date. And it's a big date for many reasons. They have many initiatives in the works already that are going to come to fruition in 2030. First of all, in President Trump, it's going to be a glorious golden era. Hopefully in the next 4 years, we'll do everything we can to bring that about. But he's going to be out of office. You're going to have a time period where both parties are kind of reforming. I mean, we saw this past 2 years. President Trump had to physically take back this party. The Republican Party was hell-bent on doing the same old message, the same old attempt, bringing in the same old warmongers and neoconservatives, and really now what you could be considered to be a Democrat. They were trying to run the same playbook, but without President Trump involved. And President Trump got through the primaries, and he got through the election. Now he's brought in people that aren't even part of the party to try to reform the government. Some people have criticism of this. I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic that the new voices, the new minds, are going to be able to get rid of corruption, ferret out a lot of tyrants who've burrowed their way inside the administrations at the EPA, at the DOJ, and other agencies. But honestly, one of the biggest parts of President Trump's reforming of the party is also bringing us to the 21st century. It's not to say anyone here is outdated, but one of the biggest steps President Trump took in this past election was he reached an entire new electorate. There were about, I think, 30 to 40 million voters that probably would not have voted in this election had President Trump not appeared on several podcasts. You know, the Joe Rogan show and all these other things. So everyone was saying this, right? It's like, what, Mr. President, please appear on something other than Fox News or something. But see, the thing is, for the longest time, because television is regulated, because television is broadcast without interruption, because television is the mainstay, that's where all the politicians' minds are. But something happened. Finally, when President Trump decided he was going to spend the majority of his media time speaking on podcasts, now everyone says it's okay to say that TV is dying. We can finally move on. It also means all of us have to get literate about not only the perils that come with being connected constantly, but also how to be effective online. And for me personally, I put everything on the line in 2021. I just come off of a tour as a White House correspondent. I was a nightly TV host. I basically took whatever resource I had and I started a media company. And I intentionally hired young. I'm talking like 17, 18-year-olds. I think the oldest person in my company, other than myself, was about 25, 26. And the reason I did this is I knew that in order for me to be effective as a communicator, and this isn't just as a media guy, as a Christian, I have a duty to understand how to communicate to people. If I can't communicate to folks, how can I spread the gospel? How can I share hope? And how can I inform people? Well, I learned from these younger folks that there was something called streaming. There's live streaming, there's super chat. You know, Chad's son, he's here. I was talking with him yesterday about this. The younger folks, they want to be involved. They want to be informed. They almost at times, though, feel that they're intentionally excluded. And it's not because anyone here, you guys are all very welcoming. You welcome me here to this wonderful forum, and I'm sure in your daily lives you're very wonderful people. You got great big families, and you're the best. You're the heart of this country. You know, it's really a model that we have to replicate. But in order to replicate it, we have to be engaged with the next generation to mentor them. And for me, I mentored about 10 to 15 younger folks over the last 4 years. And I think it's paid dividends. I think the seeds which were sowed, each and every one of them are going off to every media organization you're going to see in the White House press pool for President Trump. You're going to see them doing great work. But what I would challenge every single person here today to think, not only for your kids and grandkids, but are you engaged with someone Chad's son's age right now? Are you mentoring somebody? It's a tough thing. You have to be patient. A lot of them don't want to be mentored. Okay? You're going to go get involved in a program. You're going to get involved in some kind of club to find them. And of course, I've heard that Thea has its own mentorship program. I'm going to do what I can to send people to Thea and other programs like it around the country. Because I think a good goal for 2025 is each and every one of you to be able to find someone 17 or 18 years old that you can pour your heart into. This is so important because you are the living representation of this country. You understand things which have been forgotten. If I were to put Chad's son on the spot, and I wouldn't do that because I love the guy, okay? But he's not learning a lot at school, okay? He's homeschooled though, so he's learning a lot from Cindy, but he's not learning a lot from the public school system. And the reason for this is the public school system, it's outdated. It was built for another time. For me, I'm a product of the public school system, but I'll tell you, I didn't learn much of what I learned to apply to my work, apply to my day-to-day from the school system. It was more of something I had to check the box with. This is a waste of time and a waste of resources. It shouldn't be this. But while the Secretary of Education is being abolished and we're kind of reforming our education at the state level, we need those that are wise, those that have resources, those that have, I think, the heart to share. We need you to be involved. And many of you probably already are. And I don't mean to shame anyone here, I do mean to say, though, that I'm constantly finding young men, young women, who have no one in their lives. And it's sad. It's the worst thing in the world that we are interconnected through our devices with technically billions of people every single day, yet we don't have anyone we're physically talking to every day. And this is the reality for many younger folks. They're scared. They don't know how to engage with people. They don't know how to have conversations. A lot of this they should have learned from their parents, but hey, let's be honest. A lot of parents end up working all the time. They didn't spend any time with their kids, not out of lack, but they just weren't able to raise the kids how maybe you guys were raised. I think everyone in this room, you were lucky enough to be from a generation where the family model, the family structure was still intact. My generation, we've made our own decisions in a lot of ways. We wanted to be independent. We wanted to not follow our parents out of rebellion. We also thought we knew better, right? Well, where did that get us? Well, where it's going to get us now, though, is we have to have a reset. And while I said the date 2030, they have a term they've been using for a long time for this. They call it the Great Reset, okay? And the Great Reset, you've probably heard a lot about this. What it's really about is taking back control of society for the unelected globalist elite, the World Economic Forum leadership, the Davos attendees, the Bilderberg attendees, many of which actually come out of Chicago. Right? You probably know this. The city that we all live in the outskirts of is full of people that want to control the lives of others in this country without anyone having a say. But I'm looking toward that day with a little bit of hope. Because I think that we have at least now 6 years, going on about 5 years at this point, to change the trajectory of the next generation. And it's going to start with investment of time, but it's going to end with them being able to stand on their own feet. Right? Many people in the next generation, they want to start a family, they want to have a career. And a lot of them, they're engaged in problematic lifestyles. They're addicted horribly to drugs, video games, or even pornography, as we said before. But it's not that they're not completely asleep to be able to listen to wise voices in their lives. I know for people like me, and I know Scott Presser spoke about this and others, this election opened up a great door. There was a unity between the two generations. The young and the old came together and they said, we are sick and tired of the state of this nation. For the youth, they can't own homes. They're getting crushed by inflation. But you know what? The problem is still being felt by the older generation too. It's not as if any one group is unique in the crushing effect of communism and the socialism that was introduced over the last 4 years and really over the last 20. But I do know this. I know that any investment you make is going to be remembered. They're going to remember your name. They're going to remember the lessons you've taught them. And more than anything, I also believe that they are going to take the example that you've set. And I say, when I say teach them things, I'm not being trite, I'm not being vague. We need to teach them how to conduct themselves properly in society. It sounds so silly, but I have to do this with a lot of the younger guys. They don't know why you should shake someone's hand and look them in the eye. Right? It's kind of crazy, but no one taught them this. You have to have patience with this to know that everything they've learned is from the internet. Right? They learned from YouTube. Okay? They learned from Twitter. They legitimately did not have an older person in their life to tell them a lesson like this. But more than this, hard work, I think they have it in them to work hard. They have it in them to maybe start investing themselves in a girlfriend that's going to become a wife and a profession that's going to become a career. But they have to be encouraged. And encouragement, many people, they forget about this aspect, but remember how we were encouraged at times when we did well. I know that the past decade has introduced this really insidious thing where people are encouraged and given praise when they haven't done anything, right? The trophy for 10th place, who wants to give someone a trophy for 10th place, okay? But we should be given trophies for first place. And we should be encouraging the next generation to strive for excellence. I'm a first-generation American. I came to this country with my parents. And I was very impressed with this American spirit. It's not just about cowboys, and it's not just about having great confidence. This country has some of the greatest people that have ever lived. And I was impressed and actually humbled. It's a cheer for you guys. I was lucky to be raised in this country. I was lucky to serve in its military, and I was lucky to be mentored here. The part that we have to really instill in this next generation is that spirit of excellence. Because we didn't get to where we're at as a nation, and even where we're taking back our nation and reestablishing ourselves. We didn't get there by being fifth in engineering. We didn't get there by being seventh in literacy. And we certainly didn't get there by being lazy. Every single one of you works hard, day in, day out, to provide for your families, provide for your large extended families. We have to instill the importance of this in the next generation, or we are going to become like England or Germany or some of these other countries that have literally let themselves fall to the wayside. They have no pride anymore. They have no pride in their identity. The identity rests with every single one of you, and it's for us to imprint it on the next generation. So I thank you again for inviting me to speak here, and hopefully I've been able to instill something with you.
As you know, this is our time for questions, so I'll take anyone that, if you want to raise your hand, I'll come around with the microphone.
Hello, Chuck Reese.
Hey, Chuck.
You alluded to that the World Economic Forum had a large presence in Chicago. Can you expand on that?
Yes. So we do a lot of deep research in my field. And then what we started doing, I attended Davos as part of President Trump's Foreign Press Corps in 2018 and 2020. And one of the oddest things about that was when you show up at the airport in Switzerland, you expect everyone to be speaking German, French, Italian, or some other language. They're mostly speaking English. It's a lot of Americans. And, I was kind of a gadfly on the wall. You always wonder, what will you do if you get into one of these events, right? Okay. And the entire time, me and my crew were saying, we probably shouldn't be here. They must have really screwed up. We legitimately got to go to every meeting. There was only a couple which were like too top secret, apparently, for us to come into. But one of them I attended was on digital identity. And one of the speakers was actually, it's a prominent family from the center of Chicago. And I'll go back, I'll find my notes, I'll probably do a Substack, and I'll get the information you, Chuck. It's a prominent family from the center of Chicago, and they actually paid for an entire group of a forum like this. There's actually groups like this in the center of Chicago who, for all intents and purposes, are political enemies of ours, right? But they paid for everyone to attend. Okay, they probably spent $200,000 to get this entire group over there. And why they went is they were going to find out how they could bring back some of the World Economic Forum policies to the city. It was crazy, right? They actually brought up in one of the forums, they brought up your red light cameras. And I still remember this, because I came back and told my mother and father-in-law about this. Like, you live in one of the most corrupt cities in the world. They were saying how they had found the best way to generate a new tax, all right? Right, and you probably have heard this a few times. They were bragging to the other global elite. They were saying, hey, we've got something to teach you. We found a way in our city to shave off a couple seconds on the stop sign, on the stoplight, so that we could increase revenue by about $20 million. I would be pretty angry about this. Okay, but this family, they spoke in a way, not only were they not afraid of their identities being put out there, but more so, they felt as if they owned the city. And as someone who's gotten to spend a lot of time with people who I consider to be the heart of this city specifically. My father-in-law, he's a very accomplished engineer, but he's very smart too. He's taught me a lot about how to fix things around the house, and he's been informed as a mentor of me. For people like him, I think to the people who built this city. I think about the people that actually, the reason why Google and other companies started here. It wasn't because of this family who went to Switzerland to brag about how they cheated, a bunch of heartland people in this great community. No, it was because of people like my father-in-law, people like you. I found there were many people from Chicago who attended in 2018 2020, it was a lot of Chinese, actually. A lot, it was very, well, maybe we could talk about that. But 2018, a lot of Chicagoans and a lot of people from the Windy City. And I want to bring this up now. Your city is going to become a very important city in regard to the resistance against President Trump. So I'll probably be coming back here quite a bit in the next 4 years. It appears that Barack Obama is setting up shop here. He's going to be setting up shop here. The museum, the presidential library that's being built that has all kinds of scandal around it, there are some aspects of the structure and the construction that I think should give many of us pause. I don't know why they're doing this, but we've gotten a very shocking report that they're building like a bunker beneath the structure with blast doors. It's something out of something out of a freaking science fiction film. So I have a feeling he's going to be setting up the Windy City White House here. The same way President Trump had the Mar-a-Lago during the last 4 years. I think that's what's going to happen. So you'll see people like me and others coming through Chicago investigating this. But in addition to this, Chicago is also part of the city's initiative for the World Economic Forum. This initiative is not only for carbon taxation, but they're going to be trying to turn your entire downtown and maybe the outskirts into smart cities. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't heard about this initiative, it's very invasive. It doesn't make your lives better. It costs a lot of money, and it usually fails when you need it to actually help you. Like if you're being mugged at a red light, you're not able to get your smart camera to record it and take it to court. But Chicago has pledged to be part of the Smart City Initiative. And I'm sure, again, I don't share this to press you, but let's just say it's one of the many things that me and Chad and others are going to be helping you fight against. Okay, let's be encouraged to know we know the enemy's plans before they've been able to carry them out, and that's how we beat them in this last election, and we will beat them again on these initiatives here. Yes.
I had one thing I wanted to mention was that he mentioned Gary Franchi. I don't know if everyone was here, but in August, Gary spoke about exactly what you said, and Zach Voorhees was our speaker that time. So just to connect, we did have Gary here. So if you kind of think, well, gee, where did I hear Gary's name? He was here and spoke in August. So I just wanted to make that connection.
He was supposed to be here tonight. He was going live. He didn't want to throw his schedule out.
So just to let you know, just to make that connection. But the other thing today when we spoke, you mentioned about some of the films, and you said that you did a lot of things over the past years to help President Trump get elected, to expose. Would you be willing to share some of the clips other than Died Suddenly that you worked on? Sure. To make a difference? Yeah,
it's Chad mentioned one of the first rules is like an executive producer or producer. You're not the forefront. You don't ever want to overshadow the talent. Even though we're talented individuals, we get to do great works, but we're usually not the front-facing figure of a lot of the projects. During the primary, for example, we were the ground team that were working with Laura Loomer to help President Trump win his primary. So that was a crazy time. Okay, through blizzard, through anything, we worked tirelessly throughout the primary to make sure President Trump wasn't lied about, that the nomination rightfully went to the man that the election was stolen from. It shouldn't have even happened, right? The primary shouldn't have happened. There shouldn't have been a steal, but we knew that in order to kill it, we had to work tirelessly to expose the things which weren't very favorable about a lot of the candidates. Of course, we didn't do it to the place where they could never come back into politics, but we were ruthless. I think we were very hard-nosed, I think, with that. We've done several films since. We were pretty instrumental in working with Michael Yon and others with the films and the projects that were coming out on immigration. This past season, we did The Great Replacement, which is a film about immigration and about invasion. We also defended President Trump on the vaccine. That was a tough topic. And I know there might even be some people in the room who are still that might be one of the things you're not happy about with President Trump. But we worked with people like Cheryl Atkinson and others behind the scenes to ensure that President Trump is educated on why people who are Republicans, why Christians, why conservatives have opposition to the product from Operation Warp Speed, right? And this is a tough topic. And he tweeted, it was either yesterday or today, we're very frustrated, but he wants to be proud about Operation Warp Speed. And I'll say this, the one aspect to be proud about Operation Warp Speed is President Trump only gave the extra kind of judicial powers and initiatives to people to set this initiative up, the operation, because he felt the country was going to physically die. Not just from the virus, but he felt the supply chains were going to collapse. And I've heard him speak about that's legitimately why he did it. He didn't do it out of anything else. And also, he trusted the wrong people. Let's be fair, right? And he knows that now. He hasn't rehired Dr. Fauci. All right? He hasn't rehired Dr. Birx, you know. You're seeing people like RFK Jr., right? RFK Jr. is the single greatest sign that President Trump has learned on this topic, right? RFK didn't join the administration to see a repeat, right? But we were engaged on that. And again, our account, our platform, all the work that we do, we always make sure we're respectful to the president. The biggest thing when it came to this is so many lies out there online. That's also why you guys have to be engaged online. It is a bed of lies online, okay? Especially on places like X and other places that don't have fact-checking, they don't always have informed people. But I think the last project would be, we were engaged to set up and relaunch Frank Speech. So if you've seen a new kind of, a new skin to it, a new kind of energy behind it, that was our production team. We worked with Mike. I mean, Mike, has Mike spoken here, by the way? He has not. Yeah, Mike is awesome. If you haven't met Mike Lindell, I can't speak greater lengths about Mike, okay? Mike literally has spent every dime he has to expose the lies of the 2020 election. And he's one of those folks that before the election, I think in 2019, 2020, as we really came out, he didn't have to do any of this. He was by himself a very successful entrepreneur. But we worked extensively to help Mike Lindell and his initiatives. So those are a couple of things we've done.
Thanks for coming. I just had a quick comment about your discussion about Trump and the Operation Warp Speed. And I've always kind of justified it in the way that that he is in favor of the right to try. He did his right to try initiative, and he's in favor of putting everything out there. But with information, I think, with information about it, but make everything available to the public and let them make their own decision. And I don't think he would have mandated anything if he had gotten reelected. He would not have gone down the road of mandating anything. So make it available as kind of free market. But I think where he was led down the path was, there was no information about the vaccines that were available to us.
He's got the mandate that's been given to him is that we have to make things right for those who got damaged. Right? It's there's a fund that's available through VAERS for vaccine injured. It's so difficult to access. It's unbelievable. And maybe does anyone here know someone who was vaccine injured from? Yeah, and then maybe someone here too has been vaccine injured. They're saying it's one in 5 Americans were impacted by the shot. So that's the first thing. The second thing, 1 in 5. Yeah, 1 in 5 Americans were impacted in some form. But the other part to this is going to be the removal of the scar tissue, both spiritually, physically. I recently learned this from Dr. Edward Group and Dr. Avery Jackson. We've all had a heck of the last 4 years, whether it be the stress that we've endured or the sicknesses. We've all probably had a bout with something. There's so much scar tissue left inside of us. And that's not even to speak about the spiritual scar tissue. The battles we fought, the sleepless nights, the stress, and the impact to our families spiritually. We need ourselves a reset. And I think that in order for President Trump to be successful and to fulfill this mandate I'm speaking about, he has to empower the addressing of this. I wouldn't say he has to address the spiritual aspect. He's our president. He's not our pastor. But he has to empower the addressing of the scar tissue. And you mentioned the right to try. I'm really excited about this aspect. I just heard this past week. Because of that initiative, President Trump is going to be bringing in a lot of the doctors who fought against the lockdowns, fought against the shots. Yeah. The doctors that everyone knows were providing the protocols for healing after COVID, healing after vaccine damage. Guess what? It's all legal to bring those people in now and offer those protocols to the American people. And RFK is going to make those things available and legal, and he's going to take away, I think, some of the aspects of fear for a lot of people that are involved in products which help people who are vaccine injured. You can't use certain language. In some regards, rightfully so. There's some folks out there who take advantage of the fact that you can try to offer a medicine or some kind of a potion of sorts to people to help them. The people that RFK is going to bring in are not those people. It's real doctors, real healers, and I'm looking forward to seeing those solutions available. The same way, a lot of the experimental treatments were available under President Trump for those that were vaccine injured. So, any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
First of all, I guess to steal a phrase, you are a true American hero.
Oh,
Thank you for your work. Appreciate the enlightenment that you've given us here today. Do you believe any of the nefarious players in the current administration, those folks who have really turned the country on its ear, will ever see the inside of a courtroom, or will be brought up on charges, and they will get what they deserve for what they've done to the country? Thank you.
I do. I think President Trump, I was in the room when President Trump, won the 2016 election. I was at the Manhattan, election victory party, and I remember he came out, and I think he'd been advised, rightfully so in this regard. After an election, you need a form of a unity message, right? A form of a unity message. People need to hear that we're not going to go on some kind of rampage the town and scream victory and burn down half the city. But there's a big but here. President Trump chose to give mercy and grace to Hillary Clinton and others. And what happened is they got back on their feet and they worked tirelessly to destroy him, to hurt him, to do everything they could to enact their own revenge. President Trump is not coming back for vengeance, but 100% he's coming for justice. All right. You don't pick someone like Matt Gaetz, who has been himself attacked by the DOJ, by the intelligence agencies, been attacked by weaponized government. You don't pick someone like that to be Attorney General to be the nice guy, okay? He picked someone who had felt the abuse, the pressure of not being able to use your cell phone, not being able to have a bank account, not being able to operate freely because you were under federal investigation and not even know the reason for it. I mean, Matt Gaetz, his situation, it's shocking to me that a congressman was put through this. Let alone, we've seen what they've done to people who are not congressmen. Look what they've done to the J6 patriots. Look what they've done to others around the country. He was a sitting congressman, and they did this to him. Matt Gaetz is coming for blood. All right, and not going to kill anybody, but Matt Gaetz is coming for justice, okay? And yeah.
Okay, so this piggybacks on that, and I'm glad to hear it. I obviously, we want Trump to do what Trump's going to do with the economy and all that, but are there going to be people that are going to, prove to the American people that 2020 was stolen? I got a chart here that showed the last 4 elections, Democrats got like 65, 69 million, all of a sudden Joe Biden gets 81. So we all know it. I'm glad to hear everyone here on the same page. But I don't think you can keep moving forward because they're still telling the lie on TV. They're still comparing Kalama's totals to Joe Biden's, which were total BS. Then that brings to the J6, and I've seen like 3 or 4 documentaries on that. And when you had Brandon Straka, he was here. Mm-hmm. He showed, he was in one of the documentaries. The whole East Side was. So my point is there going to be like a surrogate apparatus, maybe in the government, but outside the government, that's going to make sure that this lie is ended right now and it's exposed, because I've seen Mike Lindell. He was foaming at the mouth at the Trump parade in Woodstock talking about Sparkmatic. That's all kind of really beyond our comprehension, but also 2,000 mules to me was a slam dunk. So I don't think we can move forward in this country with this, because they're going to attack and sandbag and sabotage them. We have to prove that. Is that's going to happen?
I do think that we're going to see what we want to see. And I want to address something real quick. You brought something interesting up. We cannot allow ourselves to just look to the government to solve all these things, right? Because we're not of the mindset that we should completely override the mechanisms of and the restraints of government in our pursuit of the truth and justice. What I do think President Trump is going to empower is that finally the people that are willing to actually investigate these topics, FOIA, ask for documents from the government and have government agencies not just stonewall them but actually provide them, those people are going to be completely unobstructed over the next couple of years. That is where you're going to see the definitive proof come from. It's not going to be from a congressional hearing. It's not going to be from a government mandate or government order. I believe it's going to come from journalists. It's going to come from producers, filmmakers, who are going to take full advantage of the fact that the National Archive, the agency records are going to be opened up. Regarding J6, that one's simple. Release the footage. Release the footage. How much of the footage has been kept behind closed doors and is too dangerous for you and I to look at? The single greatest thing the government could do right now is just upload the footage to YouTube, right? Just upload the footage to YouTube or Rumble, okay? So we can go through it ourselves. I think in regard to the jailing and the justice and these other things, a lot of the agencies, they operated in ways they felt as if they'd never have to answer for messages, emails, and actions. The beautiful part about what President Trump has done with empowering Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy with the Doge, the Department of Accountability, they're going to use artificial intelligence to see through large swaths of data. And I think that's going to produce a lot of very interesting things for us. I think the government officials, the mandarins, the people in the government who've been there a long time and they figured out how to hide their actions pretty acutely, they won't be able to hide the data that's been digitized because of this new tool. Now, I do caution on this because, like we talked about before about the new technology, brain chipping, all this kind of stuff, we can't go back after we've uploaded and implemented all this data into these AI models. So it's going to change governance and accountability and a lot of the access to information in this country. We have to be prepared to bridle that, because again, we're going to be in charge here in January, but the power structure seems to shift every 4 years. Okay, I want us to make sure that we're very judicious with what we do and what we implement over the next 4 years, so we don't inadvertently empower the next Democrat administration to then come after you and I, in that manner. So.
I've got a few questions, and one of them refers back to the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. Did you hear anything about Fermi Labs, which is not far from where you're at here?
No. Tell me about it.
No, that's just a question I had for you, because I've learned a few things, that there's a connection between Fermi Labs and CERN in Switzerland, and that's all I can say. Another thing is, we travel around the country quite a bit by car and by plane, and we've gone into areas where we see purple lights in the towns. Do you know anything about that?
It sounds like the smart lights.
That sometimes what they're sharing with some of the people is two different thoughts. One is that these are lights that have some problems with them and they just have to change them. The other theory is that the purple looking lights can be charged in a way with electromagnetic frequencies, and that the people who got the shots could be more susceptible to things.
So this topic is very interesting.
Okay.
This is one of the 9 topics that RFK Jr. is going to be investigating. This topic, what she's talking about, is EMF radiation, EMF pollution, and the Say the alleged. I gotta keep it very journalistic on this because we are investigating this ourselves right now. The alleged interaction between things that were placed inside of us from the shots or from our environment and 5G or EMF technology. And right now, so there was a study that we were able to look into. We're going to be interviewing the scientists who did it out of South Korea and Japan. What they found is that the contents of the mRNA shots that persisted inside of us, they interact with EMF and cellular and 5G. Very odd, right? It almost as if it energizes it. They showed under microscope blood, sexual tissue like sperm, and again, the material itself from the mRNA vials. They put an EMF generator next to it, and the stuff started going crazy. It started forming structures. It started moving. This is a real experiment that's been done, and it's been shown and replicated. Now you have to wonder what that has done inside of us. And to your point, I think if you think back to the beginning of cellular technology, EMF and these other things, it actually started with radar dishes in the Navy, if I remember this correctly. And the Navymen, they used to cook their sandwiches on the radar dishes. Okay, like it was an early form of microwave technology. They found out very quickly if you eat a sandwich that's been cooked in this manner, you are prone to get cancer later on. It's very bad. All right. We've done a grand experiment by placing these cellular towers in amongst our houses, amongst our communities, and worse, we amplified it and we applied this latest generation, the 5th generation of the cellular technology, that interacts with our cells at a very scary degree. It causes the mitochondrial wall of our cells to break, and worse, it also gives us brain fog. And this is a real, when we talk about real impacts to society, have you wondered why people seem less sharp? They seem a little aloof, or they seem stressed? There's documented science that's been done on this, that EMF technology causes an extreme amount of stress on your brain. And I think the impact of that maybe was intentional. But we will find out, because RFK Jr. has addressed this, and it's one of the 9 topics that he's going to be instructing funding and investigation on through the HHS.
Let me share that perhaps you may be aware of it, but not the audience. There is a film called Generation Zapped. Generation Zapped. And it'll explain how electromagnetic frequencies work and what you could do to help yourself, because you have no idea how much radiation is even coming from this phone when you're putting the dryer on, when you've got your microwave going, all the various things. The bulbs, the brand new bulbs that they came out with, they're emitting different frequencies. And what I wanted to share with you, I'm not going to identify some of my other friends in the audience, but we're involved in a lot of different groups, and one of our groups is Medical Freedom. And we've also had a lot of speakers there, and we found out that when they started analyzing some of the blood, our blood is, for those who's gotten a lot of shots, that the blood is replicating in geometric figures and replicating, and we're now causing more problems. I mean, the amount of things you can learn on your own, be receptive to the people who are sharing information with you. We've looked into a lot of different things, and there's so much more to come. And what you're doing and what a number of the rest of us are doing, you're getting a lot more attention for it. We're doing it locally. And a lot of us are also trying to be a lot more disruptive because we don't like what we're seeing going on in our own county and some of our towns. So I say, God bless our group for even getting together over here and doing what we do. And thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Lori.
Hi. Elon Musk is really an enigma, and do you have any thoughts as to his motivation, his objective in hooking up with the Trump administration? It just seems, I have this thought that maybe he smelled a victory on the Trump side, and that was really his motivation, and he had some ulterior motives, given Neuralink and Starlink.
In general, I try to always be very charitable. And until someone has betrayed me or harmed me, I'm very careful with the things I say about that person, or because just in general, it's probably a good Christian way of living, right? So with Elon Musk, I don't know him personally. He has popped up several times over the last 5 years in our investigations, like For example, I was involved pretty profusely in the Epstein investigation. We actually were part of the groups that tracked Ghislaine Maxwell down to her little hideaway property, and we were working with the victims to try to bring justice there. And when we were doing that investigation, unfortunately, Mr. Musk popped up quite a bit. And I think it came down to that when you're very wealthy and you're involved in media, you're especially involved in new technology, intelligence agencies, they like to try to cozy up to you, and they try to get in touch with you. And I never found any evidence that Mr. Musk was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, sexually or anything like that. But you have to make note. He popped up. And what you just mentioned, I have been asking that question quite a bit myself, because we know, especially due to the advancements in artificial intelligence and predictive models, that if you have access to a powerful AI structure and an API that can take in lots of data, you can predict things. You can bet on the market. Polymarket is a great example of this past election. Polymarket and affiliates were able to tell really the results by having people bet and kind of give their own response. Elon Musk claims he knew 6 hours before the election who was going to win. And I'll tell you, there's another company we've been working with. They knew about a day before. And all of it came down to the predictive nature of getting all the data that's online, all the opinions of everyone, especially on X, and then using that to show, well, of course, if 70% of the people in this county have been tweeting or posting online on social media in support in some form of President Trump, one of his initiatives, they're probably voting for him, right? And you can use that data to predict. But in respect to Elon Musk, I do think Elon Musk is a pragmatist. I do. I think Elon Musk, in a way, has forced part of the Republican Party to the center on social topics. He's definitely going to monetarily benefit from the introduction of Starlink throughout the country. Not that it's not a great technology, by the way. The Obama administration, and even going back to the Bush administration, they wasted a ton of money on broadband initiatives. I think even to areas near here, they said they were going to bring high-speed internet, and they spent billions of dollars, almost $1 trillion got invested in this program. We didn't get internet. Elon Musk has produced a way to bring internet to rural areas for cheap. However, does he now have an unfair advantage by basically being a co-president, as he's being referred to? And yes. And as I said, the big thing that I'm going to take a stand on is the Neuralink. Elon Musk, I believe, is going to use his position to mainline, mainstream brain implants for helping the sick, helping the elderly, helping the disabled. But I know for a fact that's not where he sees the market because of what he said publicly at the Neurosurgeon Association conference. He wouldn't have spoken there and spoke about it being a cosmetic surgery if he himself is not looking for everyone in this room to consider getting an elective surgery to put a chip in your brain. All right? He also spoke in the longest podcast that Lex Fridman has ever done. It was a 7-hour podcast. It was about Neuralink, and it had the entire team on. They spoke about how they want to empower civilization to have telepathy. This is real. It's something he spoke about. He wants us to be able to communicate without even uttering words anymore, and just communicate the messages and debate through just looking at each other. I bring all this up in regard to your question because business officials who cozied up to government officials before, we have to be vigilant of this. And if Elon Musk starts pushing his position too much to favor his own companies and his own initiatives, we're going to have to push back. All right? I do think Elon Musk's motivations, though, are in the right place, in that I think he foresaw that had Kamala Harris won, had the Biden, the Democrat infrastructure carried on, it wouldn't just be his companies that would go bankrupt. He was seeing the impact to the average American. And I think we can at least bet that in regard to being an American business owner, he's going to at least support good American initiatives. So,
you mentioned that there were 9 areas of investigation for RFK Jr. And in your work thus far, do you see any indication or possibility that maybe the might of the pharmaceutical industry would be reversed and their responsibility and immunity from prosecution could be eliminated, and the vaccine passport could in fact be a thing of the past and never to be revisited. Have you come across either of those items?
I have. The pharmaceutical company strength is an odd one because, all right, well, so first, the pharmaceutical companies, and the Midwest has been an interesting example of this. Not everyone who works in a pharmaceutical company or in the industry is evil. Right? We actually probably all know somebody who's worked in some form with those companies. And not every drug or every protocol they produce is bad, right? And so we have to be careful with that. A lot they have produced is bad, though. So let's be fair. They have produced a lot of really terrible things. And I think it was encouraging to see how RFK first addressed this topic when it came to advertisement. Because who that's directly going to impact are both the media companies but also the ad buyers, right? The big pharmaceutical companies, they're able to flex their strength and their profits, these other things, through media. That's one of the primary ways that they exert influence. That alone will definitely harm their ability to influence the public. The immunity question, how I've heard that brought up until now, is there is not a lot, unfortunately, and not a lot of support on Capitol Hill to remove immunity. And it's because the government feels they also own part of that burden. They feel as if immunity is rolled back, at least on things that have happened already. I think it is fair to have a discussion about any future emergency drugs and protocols and these other things. But if immunity is rolled back on previous things, the government foresees that they will have to end up bearing the burden that the pharmaceutical company probably should bear, but they'll find a way out of it. The government will end up hurting themselves. I think the first step with the pharmaceutical companies is to no longer allow them to operate without transparency. And one of the things that one of the things we proposed when we were asked about this was if they're going to ask for immunity, then they also have to prepare to deliver transparency. Their books need to be opened. We need to be able to see where every dollar is going. We need to be able to see how they've actually conducted the testing. Their argument always is, well, we have proprietary information. We can't open up we can't show you how we did no testing for the shot before it was deployed on human beings, right? That's what they say, being a little facetious, but because that's what happened. They basically did no long-term testing before they tested on every one of us with these shots and boosters. But I think if we're going to let them keep immunity, it has to cost something. It has to cost something. So maybe first step is transparency. The second is let's get the pharmaceutical companies to fund part of the relief. You know, they have ample profits from all these things. And I don't want to go too far now, so I'm going to start to sound like a socialist. Okay, but in respect to this, they committed great harm against our society. And what would we say to a company that produced faulty boots and sent our soldiers to war in the trenches with faulty boots? We'd hold that company accountable, right? Well, these pharmaceutical companies, they produced faulty and damaging and dangerous shots, right? And they sent people into the field. They harmed our medical industry. A lot of our doctors, nurses were forced to take these shots and were injured. Someone's going to pay for that, right? And people died. Yeah, thank you. Yes. I try to be very tempered with that. I don't want to sound like a madman when I come up and talk, but no, we're very angry about the deaths. My goodness. I was going to show a photo of it. I didn't bring the deck with me. When I think about the work we do, I had a friend named Denzo. Now, Denzo, I've always been blessed to have a lot of older folks in my life, a lot of mentors. Denzo was about 65. Denzo helped me. He was a former State Department official. He'd be a source for me. I was very good friends with Denzo. Denzo, he got sick during the pandemic, and they locked him up in a hospital in Virginia, wouldn't let his wife come in and see him. They put him on a ventilator, they gave him remdesivir, and they killed him. And I got a picture of Denzo in my office, and I try to remember people like Denzo were everywhere. They're the reason why we have to hold these people accountable. We can never forget. The part I've been very careful to do since then, I don't ever want what I'm doing to turn into vengeance. If that makes sense? Like I feel as if I made it about just going out for blood against all those that have harmed our loved ones, unfortunately what would happen is it might consume me too, right? I don't want to be consumed with vengeance. I want to be consumed with with love for my fellow man. I want to be consumed with the work. And I think, again, in respect to what you're asking, that's really the direction stuff's going. But that's what I'd say on the immunity. Ask for, if they're going to keep immunity, you got to get a bunch in return. You got to get transparency, and you also got to get them to pay for the damage they committed.
I got one more quick question for you. And first, before I ask it, make sure you watch the movie Final Days as well. That movie did not do anywhere near as well as Died Suddenly, but it's powerful and it's important. You can find it on Rumble. I'm sure Ed can give you more information on that. But we had an interesting talk earlier about public radio and PBS and things that might be able to transition. I was just going to ask your thoughts on that for the group.
Well, so Mr. Steve Bannon had a very interesting suggestion in 2017. And I'm hoping he hasn't forgotten the suggestion, but it was the hostile takeover of VOA and PBS. If we ever take back control of the government, he said, we have to take this almost billion-dollar kind of media entity that the government already pays for, and we have to actually use it for what we had originally said we were going to use it for, to educate the public about the country, to inform the public, to educate the kids, to share information about the different states and about our Constitution. I would love to see, under the Trump administration, someone like Steve Bannon placed in charge of that organization. Yeah, I think it's possible. And again, VOA, the first time around, they found a really slimy way to stay in control of their entities and their organization. They kept arguing that the operations would be disrupted to too bad of a degree if they ever gave up control. And I think that we all know that's a complete lie. And I do think that if we can take control of PBS, well, man, forget, it's not going to be state media. This thing's going to be freedom media. Okay? It's going to be patriot media. And maybe it would be a great place to employ all the J6 defendants, all the patriots. Yeah. Get them media jobs. Let's put them at PBS and VOA.
Well, we'd like to say thank you to Ed for coming in. Thank you. Thank you so much.